All right, so in lesson 2 here, we're going to talk about the cell as a functioning open system. And like I said, different organelles or parts of the plant and animal cells that we need to know. So an open system has many parts that work together for a particular goal. Cells maintain the life processes. Cells contain specialized structures called organelles that each has its own function to perform. Okay, so when we think of an open system, okay, there's 2 examples there. If you want, you can probably draw those out so you kind of understand that in an open system we exchange things with the environment. So things move back and forth across this, whatever that happens to be. And in an example of a closed system, it would be completely closed off. It would just be isolated and would be by itself. Okay? There would be no exchange of anything with that. All right. So remember, an open system has many parts that work together. Cells contain specialized structures called organelles. So that's what we're going to call these special structures. We're going to look at all those structures coming up here, both in plant and animal cells. Okay, they each perform their own specialized function. Okay, cells are considered to be open because they can exchange matter and energy with their surroundings in order to excrete waste and acquire nutrients. Cells carry out all the life processes, including the intake of nutrients, movement, growth, response to stimuli, exchange of gases, waste removal, and reproduction. Right? I'll let you copy those things there. There's quite a bit to copy. So, as you can see, there's some diagrams here. We're going to talk about those coming up here down the road. So we're going to talk about passive transport and active transport. And describe when that's going to happen and things like that. But, yeah. Okay? I think we talked about everything that we need to talk about there, so let's move on to the next part. We're going to talk about organelles of plants and animal cells. And it says here, protective barrier for the cell is the cell membrane. Okay? It allows for the transport of needed materials into the cell and waste materials out. It is important for cell interaction and communication, and for the recognition of molecules. So nucleus contains DNA, the genetic material of the cell, and directs all cellular activities. So the nucleus kind of runs the show here. It is surrounded by the nuclear envelope, which has pores to allow the transport of materials. An area of the nucleus called the nucleolus is responsible for synthesizing ribosomes. Oh, we're not there yet. Cytoplasm. So it's the gel-like substance inside the cell membrane that contains the nutrients required by the cell to carry out the life processes. The organelles are suspended in the cytoplasm, so it's kind of a jelly-like substance that kind of helps protect those little different organelles parts, okay, and protects them. Okay, they're in a jelly-like substance that cushions them. Okay, so ribosomes, the site where amino acids are assembled into proteins in the process of protein synthesis. What's next? Endoplasmic reticulum. So it's kind of a pathway, all right? And you're going to see this on the diagram that it looks kind of like a pathway, okay? It's a series of interconnected small tubes that branch from the nuclear envelope. Materials can be transported through these tubes. The rough endoplasmic reticulum has ribosomes attached to it and is associated with protein synthesis and packaging. And the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is associated with fat and oil production. We probably need to know those 2 things for sure. Okay, there's both a smooth and a rough endoplasmic reticulum. Make sure you know both parts, of course, and what their jobs are. Okay. So the smooth is fat and oil production, and the rough is associated with protein synthesis and packaging. Okay. This is kind of what it looks like, and again, it's going to be a little bit hard until we get the diagram here, but we'll just go through these first. So this is kind of a cross section. Okay, this would be cut in half kind of thing. So obviously the nucleus would have another top part to it here. Okay. So I'm going to do a horrible job, but obviously the top part there would be the nucleus. So that kind of that center, that sphere in the middle. And then this is always the rough endoplasmic reticulum that is connected to it. Okay. It'll also be the site where there's dots on it. So you're going to see these little dots here. Okay. So we're going to talk about that as well. But you know, we've got a bunch of little dots there. So that's always the rough endoplasmic reticulum, followed by the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, which will be like this. Okay, and like I said, they're just basically pathways for materials to pass through. Okay, yeah. Next, Golgi Apparatus. That's how we say that. The Golgi Apparatus. This is named after the scientist who identified it. It's composed of flat disc-shaped sacs involved in secretion. Okay. Don't worry about the ATP part. We'll talk about that. Receives substances from the endoplasmic reticulum and packages them for transport out of the cell. It does this actually through something called the vesicle. You could write that down. That's probably not a bad thing. So it uses vesicles to basically transport those materials out of the cell. Okay. What? Good? No? Where is it? Named after the sign, receives substances, modifies them, packages them into vesicles. Okay, basically for transport out of the cell. Okay. So Golgi apparatus, good. Okay. Again, uses vesicles. We call them vesicles, which are these sacs, basically, that are excreted out towards the end of the cell here. So this is kind of what it looks like here. Okay. We are looking at, again, if we had to kind of look at this overall here, I would say that this is probably, obviously, the nucleus, right? Inside of that nucleus would be the nucleolus. Yes. Okay. Inside of that part there. It doesn't show it really well here, so I would say this is kind of a little bit misleading, but perhaps, I don't know, I can't really tell, but this is maybe the rough endoplasmic reticulum over back and behind here. Maybe this is the smooth part. They don't always have to be quite connected like that. They kind of are. It depends on the diagram sometimes. But again, on ours, our rough one, it'll have little dots on it. The smooth one will be nice and smooth. Okay. And then what we're talking about here is this Golgi apparatus. So it kind of looks like this, okay? These flat kind of things here like this. And basically what happens is they will make these little tiny sacs here, and they will break off from this Golgi apparatus, and they will excrete things out of the cell, okay? So this would be the cell membrane here, I guess. In this case here is the cell membrane, okay, et cetera, okay? That is a process. We're going to talk about this again. All this will take time to get all this put together here. And then there's lots of many different other parts. But that is, of course, when we get things out of the cell, when we give things off, right? Just like exothermic reactions give off energy. Yeah, in this case, exocytosis means getting rid of stuff out of the cell. Endo means taking things in. Endothermic reactions takes energy in. In this case, endocytosis brings things into the cell, okay? And we will, again, talk about that when the time comes, okay? They also form these little tiny vesicles here, okay? And depending on what they need to do, okay, depending on what they need to do, you can see the Golgi apparatus is actually making an empty vesicle here to wrap around this, whatever they're taking in, okay? So the Golgi apparatus is basically, sometimes it's referred to as a post office. It takes things in, and then it sends things back out again, okay? So it depends on what its job is to, what it's trying to package, basically. And then we'll talk about lysosomes coming up here. Their job is digestion, basically. Yep.
In this, like that.
So mitochondria, this is an important part. Mitochondria, singular is mitochondrion. So if we're talking about like one of these, we talk about mitochondrion. But mitochondria convert chemical energies in sugars into energy the cell can use in a process called cellular respiration. In cellular respiration, sugar reacts with oxygen to produce carbon dioxide, H2O, and energy. Basically, that's a combustion reaction, okay, that's taking place on a cellular level. It's the fuel source of the cell. All right. The equation for cellular respiration looks a little something like this, and I would just basically go down to this part right here. So, good enough right there. Or I guess if you want, I would maybe write out both parts just so you know. Oxygen and glucose, otherwise known as sugar, it's a form of sugar, glucose, okay, gives you carbon dioxide and water, okay. What's another product of this that I didn't write there? Yep.
Energy.
And energy, okay. And that energy, this is done in the mitochondria, and that energy is used to basically power the powerhouse of the cell. Okay, it gives the cell energy to do all the things it needs to do. And again, same thing here, plus energy. Okay. Lysosomes are membrane-bound sacs in the cell in which digestion can take place. Okay. Now again, in this, kind of go back to your question here, where would you find lysosomes? Probably there'd be a lot, yes, in your digestive system, right? So the digestive, we're going to talk about this, but when you're talking about multicellular organisms, which we are, we have specialized tissues that basically look after these things, right? So, for example, your liver and things like that. So lysosomes are membrane-bound sacs in the cell in which digestion can take place. Lysosomes defend against invading bacteria. They destroy the damaged cell organelles and digest certain tissues during development. We're actually not going to talk. We will talk a little bit about, well, we're not actually going to talk about this part here, but what are the structures of plant cells only? So, first things are chloroplasts. Let's see, where did I should have just give me a second here. Where are we?
Go back.
No, I'm missing a slide here somewhere. We'll go to vacuoles here. Stores water and food and minerals, so in plant. Now, plant and animal cells both have vacuoles, but in plant cells, that is their main source of nutrients, water, etc. So in plant cells, they are large, okay, and they're usually in the middle, so we call them large central vacuoles, okay. When fluid enters, the central vacuole swells, creating what we call turgor pressure, and we'll talk more about that down the road here and what that means for the plant, okay. But that's a large central vacuole, okay. So one of the key differences, we'll talk about these as we go along here, but that is one of the differences between a plant and animal cell. They both have vacuoles. One is large and central. The other one is quite a bit smaller. Cell walls. So cell walls would be next here. Plant cells, fungi. That's Mr. Bachek. No, okay. And some bacteria have cell walls. Cell walls are rigid and supportive and are composed of a fibrous material called cellulose. So chloroplasts, they contain chlorophyll. That's that green color that you see in plants. That's chlorophyll, okay, that is used in photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process which uses energy from the sun to convert carbon dioxide, water into sugars. And we'll take a look at that chemical equation here. Is that okay? So they contain chlorophyll that produces a green color that's used in photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process in which we use energy from the sun to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars. We should write down the chemical equation for this. So maybe up by chloroplast there, where it says chloroplast, because I know there's not a lot of room here because right underneath is vacuoles, but maybe right where it says chloroplast, let's write in this chemical equation here. The chemical equation for photosynthesis, of course, looks a little something like this, right? I would say let's go with this part right here, maybe. Okay. I'm not sure that's going to show up or not eventually. 6 carbon dioxides and 6 waters gives me C6H12O6 and 6 O2s. And do not forget, we also on this side here need some energy, yes? Which is, of course, the sun. Okay. Or I guess light. It has to be light, right? But you need some type of form of energy. Usually we talk about the sun, of course. 6 carbon dioxide, 6 waters, and energy from the sun converts it to glucose and oxygen. Yes. If you want the written word, okay, or the writing of the chemical equation, sunlight and carbon dioxide and water gives me glucose, or a type of form of sugar, and oxygen. Okay, yep.
Can this say like write an equation, or if this say on a test?
I know it's a little smaller, but what do you notice about this one and the other equation we looked at? Yeah. They're flipped. Yeah, they're opposite of one another, right? So that's the unique thing about plants, and that's kind of the cool thing about plants. Plants take in energy from the sun, right? And carbon dioxide and water, and they convert it to glucose and oxygen. Where do they do that? Well, they do that at the leaves. We'll talk about that, and so on and so on. But then they flip it around, and they take the glucose and the oxygen and use that, okay? So they use that to produce other things, or to run those cellular activities in the plants and the trees and things like that. So that's what's happening there. Okay? All right. Let's go back to here now.
Are they both combustion reactions?
Nope, because one is plus oxygen, the other one is a product of oxygen. So no.
What would you call the product of oxygen?
I would just call that that would just be some kind of a chemical equation. I wouldn't say it's formation, because it's not simple elements or anything like that. It's compounds. So just a chemical equation. Okay, I think we're here now. One of the differences between plants and animals is in animal cells only, you have something called centrioles. And centrioles play an important role in cell division to ensure that genetic materials move to the proper new cells. Most plant cells do not have centrioles and instead use another process during cell division. Okay, and we're probably not going to talk about that here. Okay, so centrioles are for animal cells only. Obviously, you'll notice that these are kind of point-form things that are on both sides of here. And we've talked about what's in a plant cell only, what's in an animal cell only. And then we're going to talk about the differences between plant cells and animal cells. So we're basically leading you to the fact that, hey, this is probably a pretty important sheet here that we're talking about. And you're going to need to know all these functions, okay, and the differences between plant and animal cells. How are you going to tell the difference when you look at two pictures? But not only that, what are some different key functions between those two? Okay, good? Yeah, you didn't have to copy anything there. Okay, we're going to do that right away here. Differences between plant and animal cells. Plants have a rigid cell wall made of cellulose, giving rise to a rectangular shape, whereas animal cells do not. Plant cells have chloroplasts, which contain chlorophyll for photosynthesis. Plant cells have a large central vacuole. Animal cells have centrioles. Okay, I'll let you copy those. Finish copying here. So those are 4 differences between plant and animal cells. Make sure you know them. Obviously, that's, if they're important enough to be on that sheet, that's something we probably need to know and be able to decide between, what are some differences. All the organelle parts you need to start studying. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of homework today. We're going to stop here, I think, today. I think I'm going to give you the diagrams tomorrow. We'll do that at the beginning of class after we go over homework, and we'll do a little review about where they are and all that stuff, and we'll talk we'll do a little review of what all their jobs are and what their functions are. And then we're going to do some microscope stuff tomorrow as well. Okay, not looking through yet, but labeling it and all that stuff. We'll see how far we get with that. But then that's just going to prepare us for going to the lab here and looking at these different organelles and seeing what we can in fact see in these cases. Okay, so we're going to stop here for today. And what I'd say is going back to lesson 1. Okay, we need to make sure we have 6 questions here. Now some of these are going to be straightforward from here, of course, but some you kind of just have to think about, like, you know, how do microscopes lead to the development of a cell theory? Well, obviously, you know, the better the microscope, the more you're going to be able to see, yes? I mean, so some of them are maybe not, you know, you're not going to find the answer here, but you just got to use, I don't want to say common sense, but you got to think, well, you know, if the microscopes get better, you can see more and more things, right? You can see more and more these organelles and functions and see what's going on, okay? So there's 6 questions there that you need to do on lesson 1. And lesson 2, the one we just finished here, there's 6 questions at the bottom. So let's have those 12 questions done for tomorrow. And you got about 8 minutes left here today to get a few of those done. And then whatever you don't get done, let's have done for tomorrow. This will be a little bit more, this lesson 2 stuff will be a little bit more just from here. Okay, so comparing, etc. Okay, let's have that done for tomorrow.